Everybody, welcome to Monday, March 21st. Troublemakers. We're going to start calling Monday Decision Day because this is the day you make decisions that are going to set the rest of your week in motion. So let's start and make the decision to bounce.
Everywhere I go, the people really want to know who I is and who I be. They stop and stare.
Come on. Oh, man. Making the Monday decision kind of came up as we were writing some of the copy for the email this morning and for the podcast. Like, it's not like
literally all the NCAA basketball fans are like, this isn't decision day. That was 2 weeks ago.
Well, I cannot unfortunately count myself as one of them. I just have never been a big college basketball fan, but it watching the fanfare around, it's fun. I get swept up into like the brackets and things like that just because it's fun. But I understand, like, people have like skin in the game.
Seriously. Look, last night, before I know you were going somewhere, but I have to get my basketball in, okay?
Do it.
First of all, we didn't talk about it last week, but St. Peter's coming in and knocking off Kentucky was like the greatest thing since sliced bread for me as a Duke fan. Second, Duke last night just absolutely coming unglued against Tom Izzo's Michigan State in the last 7 minutes of the game to go on, like, I think it was like a 21-4 run to end the game and win the game. They were down 5 and came back and won. It was unbelievable.
That is an owie. That's an yeah. So here's what decision day. We have a fun show for you this morning. Brian Kramer is going to be joining us. I just saw a text pop up that he's pulling into the dealership now, so he's just going to appear in the stream at some point, and we are going to talk to him about really what is, I think, an extremely monumental moment that he was cool enough to give us a front row seat for on Friday. It was Friday, right?
Yeah,
Saturday. Yeah, Friday. Brian Kramer his team executed the very first retail automotive transaction in the metaverse. Like, a real car was sold in the metaverse. I was explaining it to my wife. She's like, wait a minute, fake car, real car? No, real car, fake world, real signatures,
kind of real world.
Real payments are about to start for this guy or gal, whoever it was. So, Kyle, we'll talk about it with Brian, but why don't you set us up since we know he's coming in? You had a little bit of a front row, and obviously we have a solid video. And if you haven't seen it yet, there's a full article written in the background. You can check it out in the show note links, or in the links in the stream, or just go to ASOTU.com and go to articles, or you really should be on the email list anyway. If you go to ASOTU.com and sign up for the email, you'll get one once a day, Monday through Friday, with breaking news like this. So, Kyle, you were kind of close to this one.
Well, no, so it was real cool. So I get a call from Brian on Friday afternoon. He's like, yo, you ready in 15 minutes? I was like, yes. Where do I look? So he's like, I'm going to, and then all of a sudden things got really weird, right? Because he was like, I'm going to send you an email. It's going to give you a link. It's going to be like this Ready Player One type feel. And then make sure you take a good picture of yourself because you're going to create your avatar. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting in real now. Let's go. So I get a link. It sends me to a website. I had to log in, sign in. And so I have my very first avatar in spatial.io, which is the place.
Well, I have the only question that I really care about with the avatar. Did it get the hat right?
No, it gave me a beanie. It gave me a straight beanie. I was like, oh man, I look like a
I look like a 2017 Coldplay fan.
Right? It's exactly, actually, I looked like Bono without the glasses. It was like, hey,
there are worse looks.
Right.
The worst looks.
So I have the avatar. I go into the conference room. It was actually funny because I'm waiting there in the conference room, and I'll ruin the end of the story. I didn't actually get to stay because I had to roll to another meeting, but I was in the conference room, and there's this massive Rubik's Cube in the middle, which
I did see. Absolutely, I know what that is about.
I don't know what that's. I think it's like setting the space, right? So that you know what's going on, or maybe it's just a centerpiece. We can ask him what he did there, which was cool to me because that's real nerdy to me. I can do a Rubik's Cube pretty quickly, and so it was pretty fun. But yes, there's a Rubik's Cube.
In the live stream, you can kind of see it in the video. There's a
So, but what was really funny was over in the corner, I found this little spot. I was kind of walking around, and I could go to Brian Kramer's like lake or beach house, I think it was. So like to that, and I'm all of a sudden at this like lake house in this gorgeous setting. I can hear the waterfall. Actually, the spatial audio as I turned was happening, so I could imagine that the spatial audio is so clean in this conference room as well. So I think that's a really interesting part of this. But so yeah, so if you're watching the stream, you're kind of seeing how and we asked him in the article how the technology kind of comes together. Right. So you have to have all the plumbing in the real world.
Yeah. Like I'm watching the stream and I'm seeing like a Germain Toyota contract scrolling up and there's somebody looking at the screen. Is that the customer?
Yes. So yeah. So customers looking at the screen, the F&I manager is kind of scrolling through everything. So it's actually utilizing software and hardware in the real world. So on a MacBook with all of the Vin Solutions, Route One, Prodigy, softwares that are happening at the dealership level, and then implementing them in the metaverse via a screen that everybody can see and talk about.
So if you're not watching the video, just imagine, like a fake room, like a fictitious 3D room. There are characters around or avatars around which represent the real people. There's a screen on the wall looking like you were in a conference room, and there's a presentation screen. And on that screen is basically what you would see on an iPad, where the F&I manager is showing options, is scrolling through the contract. You can see the customer is able to see where he has to sign. And there's a interesting Brian Kramer.
Brian Kramer has a pop collar like it's 1999,
and he's got this game time face on. It's amazing. Okay, so we'll show you that. You can link out to the video to see that. But yeah, I just wanted to explain it for anyone that wasn't listening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was a really neat experience. I was kind of impressed, even because I wasn't obviously on an Oculus. I was sitting in front of my Mac in this space. And so, I was just impressed at how the audio worked in my in-ears and how the space looked and felt. It was easy to maneuver around. There we go. We got Brian actually joining the show now. So excited to
bring him in, Isaac.
Bring him on in.
What's up?
Hey, what's up?
We have the real world Brian Kramer. We were just looking at the metaverse Brian Kramer.
I'm getting
He's working on his audio.
I got the audio now.
Okay, we're looking at the real world Brian Kramer. We were just looking at the metaverse Brian Kramer, and you don't look anything like it because your collar isn't popped like it is in the metaverse.
Right?
There we go.
I was like, that Brian Kramer is from 1999. That ain't fooling anybody.
I asked
Not 17 Coldplay concert.
That's it's funny. You were listening, right? Because I might not be in the metaverse till they figure out the flat brim hat thing. I'm just saying. Bob, escalate that to Zuck right away.
Well, no, you got to get an NFT ASOTU deal.
What do you mean?
Yeah, so then when you buy the NFT in the metaverse and slap the hat on.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, you're right.
There's so much avatar gear. There's I forget what the Nike one is. It's the RTF KR Rocker something.
Yeah,
it's their whole brand for avatar.
We actually talked about it's Artifact. It's like Artifact. Yeah, they bought that sneaker company, and all of a sudden it's sitting there next to like the Nike logo and the Jordan logo and the Converse logo. We're like, shoot. Okay, that fixes it. Right. I forgot about the NFT sync in the metaverse. I'll get the ASOTU hats.
Then you can jump from Decentraland to the sandbox and
Okay.
Take ASOTU the whole way through.
You're like the expert now. All of a sudden, you're the resident expert in automotive on the metaverse, Brian.
60 days. It's kind of like in the Matrix with Kung Fu.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is a day and age where 60 days makes you an expert. Like when we were talking about NFTs and POAPs, and I was like, we're kind of experts on this right now. Why? Because no one else has put more than 60 days into it.
That's all it is.
Well, here you are. So we just kind of walked through the transaction a little bit, right? Kyle was talking about all the plumbing that needed to be in place. Give us your take on like how the day went down, how the customer reacted, and just what your experience was going through it the first time.
So I would say that the plumbing it's not the sexiest thing. It's not the thing that anybody wants, it's not newsworthy, but it's the most important thing, because without that, nothing else, the shiny stuff doesn't, can't happen.
Yeah.
So the transaction was with one of our associates. We turned it into like a party basically. So on that, the version that you were showing, we've got test just to protect the PII and that sort of thing.
Yep.
But everybody was, obviously it was a wow factor. There was a couple interesting ones. Wendell Hardy, who's kind of like he's the transmission of our dealership. So I mean, he puts the power and the torque to the road, and as I was showing him the goggles, he walked in, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, and he saw me in at 4:00 on a Saturday, and I was trying to get it set up. And I go, hey, check this out, Wendell. And he goes, Kramer, I'm not going down that rabbit hole with you. He goes, that's your deal?
He's like, I'm not going, like, I'm out. Metaverse.
He's like, this is a seat and I sit in it.
He's like, once you figure all that stuff out, then come get me at the end. But I'm not going down that rabbit hole. Somebody's still got to make sure that everything's running.
The adults are working. Translation: the adults are working, Brian.
Right. So I had him look through those goggles, and I go, you got to just check this out. And he looked through. He goes, and I go, here, let me have him back so I can show you something else. And he goes, hold on a second. What the hell am I looking at?
He's just realizing.
Oh yeah. So he's in Venezuela on a drone thing going up on YouTube VR up Angel Falls. Oh. And I go, here, let me show you the offices. And he it's like stiff arming me. He goes, hold on. Let me just figure out exactly what.
We'll take these. What? Right.
It's like, I'm standing right here.
Right.
Meanwhile, they're paging him on a hardiness, right? He's like, later.
So then, Mr. Jermaine was looking through them. And his son, John, told me, he said, good luck with that.
How old is Mr. Jermaine?
He is mid-60s.
Okay. Just wanted context.
So, and he's always been innovative for, I've known him for almost 30 years, and he's always been extremely innovative. And so, but he's also hesitant to not go chasing shiny objects at the same time.
Right. Yeah. He's done enough of that.
Right. So he puts those things on, and he's looking around and he's like, okay. And very quickly, just like anybody who's put these goggles on, he said, so walk me through what the plan is with this. And we had PBS here. Now, the problem is PBS, I couldn't get it going while they were here, so I had to send them the after shot. They took some shots of parts of the elements or whatever, but the actual F&I delivery, it obviously wasn't as smooth as we have DR now. Sure. But it's no different than how DR was the first year back in 17 and 18 when we did that. Absolutely. So it was clunky. It was, Kyle, you got jammed up 2 or 3 times. I'm like, hold on, and postpone 2 or 3 people's dinner, because of this, max headroom moment. But, it went down, and it was very cool because the staff here was not willing to let up either. They're like, no, we can figure this out. We're going to, we had to switch from an iPad Pro to a MacBook because we couldn't get that to display up on the screen. Mm-hmm. Little snags like that, but we got tag and title. We got the contracts. We got the, all that stuff. And it's very interesting as you're going through it. I had a buddy of mine from J&A jump in, had another buddy of mine from the Dimmitt luxury collection jump in. Mm-hmm. And I was asking them at the end, I said, what did you think? And, and they're pretty tech savvy. And they said, this is just, blowing me away that because my one friend, Kevin, who's up in Sarasota, he does remote deals out of St. Pete all the time, like on a daily basis. So he said, so I could literally have them do the deliveries up there with my customers here, put a pair of goggles on, and there's no better form of transparency. You can see obviously the size of that power of attorney, and it's right there. I mean, it's like the Willy Wonka signing thing when you're signing away all the fine print, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Real big in front of you. Everyone's right there to ask questions. There's group accountability. There's all kinds of good stuff going on.
Nobody can say they didn't see it or didn't know what was going on.
Right. Right. That's a great point.
Yeah, it's way stronger than like delivering a vehicle and sending a delivery driver with a notary to go sign it. It's actually a more secure transaction than going and getting the paper signed, probably at this point.
It is. It totally is, because there's a attestation trail, so you can see the IP addresses back and forth and to and from or whatever. Wow. The other misconception is that you have to have the goggles on, because half the people that were in that audience did not have goggles on.
Right.
They were just looking at it the way that
okay.
We were just looking at it. So you can have a 2D or a 3D version.
Right. So that totally takes out the hardware holdup.
That's awesome. So you said something, and I asked you this question after you sent us the final video of everything. But you said something about, this feeling just as clunky as DR did a couple years ago. And I asked this question of, what's the intentionality around slowing down to speed up? And I think that that's really important for a lot of people in automotive right now, for you to hear you kind of answer that question live, because a lot of times we think about this as, well, we're trying to get a faster transaction. We're trying to utilize technology and DR, and we're trying to figure all of this out. And you're going, wait, because we've sped up so quickly on the other side of things, we can actually pull back right now because we know what's coming in the future. Talk a little bit about the mentality around that and how, how the whole dealership is embracing that type of feel.
So it's kind of like coming up with a battle plan when you're in the battle and the bullets are flying. Obviously, your adrenaline's pumping. It sucks different parts of your brain. The blood flow goes to your amygdala instead of your prefrontal cortex, which is logic and reason. So when that blood draw starts happening, you're just in a fight or flight mode. That's the worst possible time to figure out any sort of strategic initiative or any type of game plan. The game plan should be in a calm environment like this, where, okay, so here's friction point number one. Here's friction point number two. We're not going to talk about friction point number two until we get past friction point number one. And figuring that out at a sales desk, which is what most dealerships try to do. Oh, okay, we're going to do this. So you got 2 or 3 people going on, and then all of a sudden you start having some sort of, progress going on. And all of a sudden somebody comes up and they go, hey, I got a heat case out here. I got this, 5-alarm fire going on, this atomic bomb going off. I need somebody to go out there and jump on this grenade. And then everybody starts scrambling. It never gets done.
Right.
The good thing for me is I've got Wendell Hardy and the whole rest of this management team that are like my left tackle. So I got plenty of time in the pocket, which, I haven't always had in my career. But if I don't have that, then this other stuff doesn't happen. And we all have to have conversations about who's doing what, role clarity. In order for that to happen, they've got to do this and this and this. But at least they see that, hey, as long as it makes them just better leaders, owning it and having the empowerment to see things through, and me not micromanaging that stuff. But we've all got to make sure that we're all aligned, even though we're all going in different directions, towards a common goal. But there's a big difference between strategic planning and, working on the business and working in the business, and knowing the difference.
What do you think is the real adoption curve, right? There was obviously a big push to say, like, can we do this, right? Is it possible to do it? And then you start putting the pieces together, get all the plumbing connected, and you're like, oh, we can do this, right? And then on Friday, you have to do the first one, right? And you learn a lot when you do the first one, right? But you do the first one. What does the next 6 to 12 months look like for you and the team at Germain? Like, what do you think this is actually going to do, right? Like, we found out we can do it. Like, what's the real world application over the next 12 months as you see it?
So it's kind of like getting to you think you're getting up to the summit. All of a sudden you're at this base camp and you're looking around and you're like, oh, like Everest, I didn't realize there was that much more to go above the clouds. And it's almost limitless, but it's also daunting. I now realize that before the mass adoption of 5G, which is going, some of them have already happened, but I guess Verizon sunsetting 3G phones, flip phones, June 1st.
Yep.
So what comes after that is obviously a 5G, transformation. And the 5G is 1,000 times faster than the 3G to 4G. Or I'm sorry, it's 1,000 times faster than 4G. Going from 3 to 4 was a 500 time increase. But
Wow.
if you remember 3G, that it was hard to send. You had to wait a while to get one picture.
I remember.
You had to text. You had to hit the button 3 times, right? And you'd wait for this desktop site to slowly process. You couldn't schedule airfare. You couldn't buy a car. You couldn't you couldn't do a lot of things that you can do on 4G. Well, 5G is 1,000 times bigger, more exponential than that. So it's kind of, once I got into that metaverse, and there's some latency issues, a lot of latency issues, and a lot of things that are going slow because it's hard to picture it. It's like being on a 56K modem right now compared to what it's going to be. But you see all the different
matter so much. Like if you're in because like say, you're in a store, right? Someone's likely going to be in their home. Why does 5G matter to that? Or do you just think, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It matters in so many different ways. What it's going to do in terms of the processing capability of IoT, connected car, how everything is going to connect to it and the amount of massive exponential growth that it's going to allow. Not just, since the processing power is so big, you don't need HTML coders and you don't need Python, coding specialists in order to build websites. It's already, and you've got people that there's going to be businesses within businesses producing NFTs of houses and hats and chairs that you can just build things out in, like, I bought the property in Decentraland. You can sit there and just have that all specced out. So it's not just going to be a few web developers building this. It's going to be all of us and everybody else. It's going to be a massive undertaking. You're not going to have to be that whatever.
So what I'm hearing, what I'm kind of pulling out of that is that 5G, although it's not going to make, like, it might make the transaction that you just executed like a little bit faster, easier. The real benefit is once 5G opens up, you're just saying that there's going to be a kind of like a flood of development and people jumping into the space. So all of the surrounding technologies and availabilities, and that's all going to see a massive push forward once 5G.
Yes, and you'll see mass adoption.
Yeah.
I lost Mr. Germain as it couldn't happen fast enough, and he said it's not easy enough.
Yeah.
And until the iPhone came out, it wasn't easy enough to be able to browse online and stuff. So that was really the holdup, and that was the 4G transition. It's going to be the same thing like this, but times 1,000. Mm-hmm. The other piece is the behind the scenes plumbing that has to happen, that I realized, wow, this is going to, when this thing hits, it's going to be so fast. It's so easy that there's so much more infrastructure work behind the scenes and the plumbing that needs to be done that I hadn't thought about. That's what was daunting.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
We're not ready for this.
One example of a plumbing piece that needs to be put in place.
So when somebody's, if you're walking around and you want to click on a car, and in there's discords and different links or whatever to get it to look at a vehicle. So obviously the signing ceremony is one thing. We had that down, and once we get some more bandwidth, that'll be fine. That actually was pretty smooth. It's the other pieces of calculating your own payments, appraising your own car, and making sure that those things are connected. Because ideally, as I'm in there, I'm looking at it as, I want somebody to walk up to a vehicle. If that vehicle is a digital twin of a vehicle that's on my lot, I want them to be able to click on the Monroney label, go right into calculating their own payment, building out their own deal, selecting their, F&I products, all of those different things. And each one of those has to be checked and on the mobile site and the DR tool. Now you've got not just, is my mobile site and my desktop site set up? Is my Metaverse, is it Metaverse friendly?
Well, and all that's APIs. And it's not just enough to build an API at this point. You have to build an API that can be hit quick enough, right?
Right.
Because a lot of people have built APIs, but there's still latency in simply having the API in the wrong, like writing it in the wrong version, right? I'm actually dealing with this in a project that I'm working on where we're hitting an API, but it's taking about 6 times too long than it needs to be able to implement correctly. And so that's like 18, and we're building on Web 2.0. That's 18 times too slow for the metaverse to catch it.
Right.
And as we're going through that, everybody who's in there, it's a pressure cooker, that I felt, because everybody's sitting there going, hey, why does it happen faster? What's taking so long? Because you're fumbling along the way. So to do that at scale, it's kind of what caused us to keep pulling back when we initially were doing digital retail. Okay, let's go back to the drawing board before we come, we're ready again. Because you go in there and you're like, okay, there's definitely something here, but we got to, tighten up all these leaks.
If there was ever a time to press this button, it's right now.
Did I do that?
I wish I had a hyped up version of that button right now. Because there's so much going on right now, which is great. And there's people that, like, in development companies right now, automotive tech companies are like, we just got to the point where we thought we were going to figure out this one thing. And then it comes in, it's like, like, how about 18 times too slow? You thought it was 6 times too slow.
Right?
There's obviously so much more conversation to be had around this. I think that it's a monumental moment. I'm glad that we're kind of like putting the little hash mark on the timeline right here with this interview, with the article, with the video that you shared. Kind of as we wrap this conversation, this part for today. Do you have another transaction plan as of this point?
Yeah. So right now we're just going to do them with associates.
Yep.
That way we can beta test it. We don't
Yep.
have to be again, unless there's a customer. I had a buddy of mine that came in the other day during the filming of the delivery, trying to figure out what we were doing and what was going on.
Yep.
So if somebody like that comes in, they want to be patient and go through it, or if anybody on this, listening to this podcast wants to be a part of it and has some patience and wants to go through that transaction,
I have somebody in mind that would be a very high profile one. We're going to come back to that, but that just triggered something in my mind. We'll talk about that offline. But Brian, as usual, thanks for being a troublemaker. Thanks for letting us be included in this process. And they will say years from now, it happened right here.
That's right.
They will say, Brian, have an awesome day. If you need anything, let us know, and let's just keep rocking it.
See you guys.
See you later. Yep. Yo, man, he is just
so good,
buttoned up and ready to rock,
ready to go. It's really exciting. It's really fun. I'm glad we got to kind of cover it and see it firsthand and be a part of it, because like it is. It's clunky right now, but someone has to be first and someone has to go through the clunky.
Heck yeah.
Right?
Heck yeah. Oh, we missed it. Ben Hadley, the stinking delay. Brian Kramer, want to buy my Tesla first traded in the metaverse? Probably the answer is yes. We'll talk about that later. Hey, we'll cut this out. I know the stream's getting a little long. It was a monumental moment. We think we can go for there. Let's talk about a little bit of news, because we can cut this up and put it out later too. We have a few other things to talk about today. First of all, let's maybe EV price hikes.
Wow. Yeah. So I think it's the third or fourth one in 2.5, 3 weeks at this point.
Everybody realizes now, the dam has been broken. So if you're going to announce it now.
Got to go do it right now, right? Because Rivian hurt everyone the way they did it. So let's not do it like Rivian, and we'll do it the right way.
Everyone else is like, thanks
for money.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's so good. Yeah. I mean, we talked about this when Tesla did it, but the reality is that because these manufacturers are not getting the opportunity to mark cars up like retail auto dealers, they're not getting the profit margins, and they're not getting the margins on all of the supply chain issues or lack of product out there in the market. And so they've got to do something about it. And, everybody's hiking prices. So the EV manufacturers should be able to as well. And if they're going about it the right way, not a bad plan.
Yeah. I mean, and so just to give you a little review, if you didn't hear last week, so Tesla's cheapest model now is $48,190, which is the Model 3, which, if you ever drove it, is a cool car. It's a tiny little car, though. It's a tiny little car. So you look at other sedans you're getting for 50 grand, right? All of a sudden it's like, man, that's an expensive sedan. And I think it's also, and then Rivian, obviously last week, Chinese EV maker, what's the name? Xpeng?
Yep.
Xpeng? How do you pronounce it? Do you even know?
I have no clue.
Okay, I gave you two options there. But so they're increasing as well. So it's like going across the board. Lucid said they're teed up to go in a price hike. And my kids were talking about gas prices this week as we're driving around, right? And we're like, wow, EVs look like a much better idea right now. It's like, well, until you see that there's now another between 3 and I mean, some Tesla models have gone up as much as $12,000, right? So, they're Model X. So if you think about it, it's like, well, how expensive really is gas if now you pay $5,000 more for the car, right? Exactly. Because it's an EV. The savings I think it will always equalize, right? I think the savings on the fuel or the electric that powers it, I think it's always going to equalize from a market condition. It's just my thought. And looking at these price hikes, right? I mean, gas is getting more expensive, but chances of gas going back down in the next 12 to 24 months, I think, are a lot higher than these EV prices going down again.
Yeah, they're already down. Gas prices are already down 20 cents in my market. So,
once you establish the EV price, it's going to go down slowly.
Yes.
Right. So say we tacked on 5, 6, 7 grand, it's probably not going to go backwards in any kind of meaningful trajectory or meaningful speed. So I think that's going to offset that whole argument,
Until the legacy OEMs are doing it at scale, we're not going to see EV price drops, right?
Well, even when they are doing it at scale, I think look, Tesla, I mean, it's a premium brand, right? So they're going to hold a premium value, but even the cost of the raw materials, especially, I mean, most of the EV is the stinking battery. Like the cost is so high on the battery, like you can only get so efficient on the metal and the paint and all that stuff, right? And so only time will tell. Only time
will tell.
Here's another article that we included today, just because we like to follow technology and disruption, and DeFi, or decentralized finance, has been taking a huge swing forward. Also, disruption in the banking industry, like fintech, right? It's been seeing a massive swing in the last 5 years. And a little context for that came out in an article in the Wall Street Journal today, talking about now that the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates. So a little education here. Federal Reserve raises interest rates. This is the rate at which banks borrow from one another, or can borrow from the government, or buy bonds. So the Fed is raising interest rates, meaning money is getting more expensive for banks to borrow from one another, which means they have to charge you, the consumer, more to borrow it from them. Well, when there was a 0% interest environment, all these fintech companies were able to leverage very low cost money, right? And then lend it out at very low cost. So they're really disrupting banks and speeding technology. People are like, oh, well, why wouldn't I go with one of these banks? I get more interest in my savings account, right? It's a lot faster and easier. However, the pendulum swings.
Yep.
Now that interest rates are rising, banks are resuming some of their leverage, because back in the old days, the real money that you borrowed from the bank actually came from someone else who deposited their money in the bank. So deposits were the literal money that you would borrow. And so now banks have all this money that's deposited in them, and now have some leverage over the financial
because savings account have more money in them than they have in history in the US right now.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Shoot, I didn't read the article.
I think it's in history. I think I read that. I mean, it's a skyrocketed number, right?
It makes sense. A lot of people saved over the pandemic, right?
Yep.
Pandemic happens. People are just starting to save. Or there's a lot of not incentive money. What do they call that money that everybody got? Relief money. What do they call that? Stimulus money.
They got their stimmy checks.
Got the stimmy. So there's a lot of that in the bank. So now the bank can basically take that money and lend it out to other people and charge a lower interest rate.
Because they have the money instead of lending from other banks, which is based on the Fed rate.
So if you're an auto dealer, right, the local bank might actually start to get a lot more competitive than some of these national banks that don't take deposits, or fintech companies that don't take deposits.
Watch credit union rates drop.
Oh yeah. And so we thought that was a nice little morsel to plug in. We learned a little something about macroeconomic banking today, didn't we?
Man, we learned a lot of things today. And man, if it is keeping your head up, but I want to get back to this, because I think this is the key point that Brian keeps saying, is there have to be people in your organization working on the business and in the business simultaneously. That we call that 1 foot in today and 1 foot in tomorrow, keeping your eyes up, but keeping your nose down to the ground, and making sure that you are focusing on each area. Because if you lean too far to one or the other, you can go in a ditch really quickly.
Well, I think that is all we can handle on a Monday morning show. The longest one in history, monumental one, worth it. Look, Monday's the day you make a decision. Not can you, but will you? We're going to be here making trouble. Hope you join us.